Okay, in this video we're going to take a look at mental maths. Now, even if you don't plan to actually do the maths section and you just want to skip it, you should still take a look at this video because being able to do mental arithmetic in your head is very important for almost all the sections. Problem solving, physics, chemistry, they all require the same stuff. Now, what I mean by mental maths is basically just arithmetic, and arithmetic is just addition, subtraction, division, and multiplication. Not just of whole numbers though, that includes fractions, decimals, and percentages. Now, I'm not actually going to teach you how you do subtraction, addition, and multiplication and that type of stuff. This is stuff you should already know. It's stuff that you would have learned in middle school and that you probably just need a refresher on because you're probably used to using a calculator in high school. So really, there's nothing new to learn in this section. It's just remembering things and getting comfortable with doing arithmetic in your head. So how do you get comfortable with mental arithmetic? Well, the key is just to practice every day. That is, think up your own maths problems. You can just think of them in your head, write them down, and try to solve them on paper, and then check your calculator if you got the answer right. Do that every day. It only takes about 10 minutes, but it's well worth it. Really, you can just think of things like 51 times 62, or 62 divided by 49, or 348 minus 215, something. Just think of these numbers and try solve them on a piece of paper and then check if you got the right answer. If you can get comfortable doing these types of things really quickly, it'll be a massive help in the Imat. Something that is super important for the Imat is fractions. You need to be able to multiply fractions and divide fractions, add and subtract them, that kind of stuff, but you also need to be able to translate them into decimal form. And for some of the fractions that don't turn out that nice in decimal form, like 1 over 6 or 1 over 7, just approximate them to these numbers that I've written down here. If you can remember this, it'll be of massive help in the Imat. You also need to know your multiplication tables, at least up to 12, but if I was you, I'd go all the way up to 15. So this is stuff that you just want to remember so that you can do your multiplication really quickly. For instance, if I ask you what is 7 times 8, you should instantly say 56. It should take you no longer than 5 seconds to come up with that answer. You also need to know your squared numbers. So for instance, if I asked you what is 7 squared, you should just know that is 49. Know that for all the numbers up to 20. Cube numbers are less important, but I'd learn the ones up to 10 at least. And then we have prime numbers. You need to know all the prime numbers up to 100. And what is a prime number? Well, it's just a number that can only be divided by itself or 1. And you also need to be able to work with percentages. But really, if you know how to work with decimals, then you know how to work with percentages. You just divide the percentage by 100 and you get a decimal. Okay, let's do this practice question here. 0.334128 divided by 0.14232 is closest to which of the following options? Okay, now just looking at this, dividing these two numbers looks very unreasonable. At least in an exam where you don't have a calculator and where you're expected to do a question in under 2 minutes. And in the Imat, when something looks unreasonable, it usually is. So this implies to us that there must be a simple way to do this, which doesn't actually involve using long division. Okay, so what can we do? Well, we can't divide these two by long division. That would take far too long, and that's not reasonable. What else could we do? Well, take a look at the answers. They are all in fraction form. That implies that when we're working through this problem, at some point we should convert into fractions. And that begs the question, can we convert these into fractions straight away? Well, we can't exactly convert them into fractions, but we can approximate them. 0.334128 is very close to 0.333 repeater. So that means that that can be approximated to 1 over 3. Okay, what about this other one, 0.14232? Well, remember how I said that you can approximate 1 over 7 to 0.14? Well, we can approximate that to 0.14. So that means that we can approximate this problem here to 1 over 3 divided by 1 over 7. Okay, now we actually have a very easy problem to solve. 1 over 3 divided by 1 over 7, you just use the fraction rules, which I hope you already know. Basically, when dividing fractions, you just take the one that you're dividing by, flip it, and then you times them. So that becomes 7 over 3, and that is answer B. So yeah, super easy question, but you have to know your fractions. Don't be the person that forgets your fractions, because if you do, you just missed out on some very easy marks here. Okay, here we have another example, and this one's very easy. What is 58 multiplied by 60? Now, if possible, you should always put the numbers you're multiplying into numbers or terms that you are familiar with. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I mean that you're probably not used to multiplying 60 by 58 in your head. But 60 multiplied by 58 is the same as 60 multiplied by 50 plus 60 multiplied by 8. And that becomes very easy. What's 60 multiplied by 50? Well, that's really simple. That's just 3,000. What about 60 multiplied by 8? Well, 6 times 8 is 48, so if it's by 60, it's going to be 480. And then you add those up, and that'll give you answer A. So really, you can see how you can do these multiplication questions in just a few seconds. The trick here is to know your multiplication tables. If you do that, it'll save you a lot of time. And when dealing with arithmetic questions, always try to put them into terms that you're more familiar with. That'll speed the question up a lot. Alright, let's try this one. What is 27% of 74? Now you should always ask yourself first, can I approximate this? And you do that by looking at the answers. And in this case, the answer is no. You cannot make any approximations here, because some of the answers are really close to each other. Like 20 and 19.98, no, we need to be exact when working out this question. Okay, so we have to be very exact in our calculations. But 27% of 74 isn't that easy to work with. So let's split it up into 25% plus 2%. That becomes a lot easier. So what's 25% of 74? Well, that's just 74 over 4. And what's 2% of 74? Well, that's just 2 times 74 over 100. Simplify that further, we get 37 over 2 plus 148 over 100. And simplify that further, you get 18.5 plus 1.48. What does that give us? Well, that gives us 19.98. And that is answer C. So again, this illustrates with arithmetic how important it is to put the question in terms that you are more comfortable with. 27% is not a nice number, but 25% and 2%, well, that is very easy to work with. Okay, I think we can leave this lesson at that. And really, there's nothing new to learn in this section. It's just relearning stuff that you already know. But don't be arrogant with it. I know arithmetic seems easy, but you're probably used to having a calculator for these types of questions, so you need to get used to doing them in your head. So make sure that you practice this stuff in your own time. Really, you only need about 10 minutes per day to do this. Think up some arithmetic in your head, try solve it on paper, and then check if you got the right answer on your calculator. Really, it's super easy to do, and it's well worth it for the Imat. This will help you not only in the maths section, but in the problem solving section, in chemistry, in physics. Really, you have to know this stuff.